Thank you. So once again, for those of you who have entered in the last minute or so, hello, and thank you for joining our April edition of our virtual advisor meetup session. Before we dive in, can you all hear me okay? Thumbs up. Sounds great. Thank you. Before we start, I'd like to make a land acknowledgement. In the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect, we recognize our work takes place on many traditional Indigenous territories across Canada and internationally in countries where we support economic development. Acknowledging this is but one part of our ongoing reconciliation journey that we undertake with sincerity and responsibility in every aspect of our work. We're very glad to be able to continue to host the regular sessions of our virtual meetups in both English and in French. My name is Magda Shishko, and I'll be your moderator today. As I mentioned, a part of today's session will be recorded. This will be the first hour, which is composed of the presentations by our speakers and the Q&A sessions. Only the video of the speaker will show on the recording. That means that if you ask a question with your video on, then it will show in the recording. If you are not speaking, your video will not show in the recording. Either way, if you wish to turn off your cameras, you can do so now or at any point throughout the session. I want to thank you all once again for taking the time to be a part of this meetup with us today. We are always excited and happy to have the opportunity to have a face-to-face meeting for our advisors and others who are interested in our programs, even if it's virtual. If you are new to Catalyst Plus or new to the meetups, the purpose of these sessions is to provide an opportunity to our advisors to share information and experiences with each other. This is also an opportunity for you to learn more about Catalyst Plus's programs and processes as things are always evolving. In addition, you can always network with one another, with advisors from the same sector as you who do similar work. Each session will have one or more focus points, so we're really excited to be able to host a couple of sessions each year. For this session, you will be learning how to share your Catalyst Plus story, discovering effective ways to tell your story and engage with Catalyst Plus, your friends, and your networks. I would also like to introduce the volunteer services team who will be helping with running the meetup. Pilar Albareda, volunteer services officer, who will be operating the chat box and helping with technical support, as well as Pug Graffland, volunteer services manager, who will be supporting us behind the scenes. On today's agenda, we will start with a presentation by Andrea Josic, who is the content writer for Catalyst Plus, followed by a Q&A session where you can ask her any questions you may have regarding her presentation. Then we will hear from Dan Rubenstein, Catalyst Plus advisor, also followed by a Q&A session regarding his presentation. As I mentioned, both presentations and the Q&A sessions will be recorded. This will conclude the formal session, which will take about 1 hour, and then we will have 30 minutes of networking in breakout rooms. The networking session will be informal and is completely optional if you would like to stay for it. Before we begin, I would like to just go over some housekeeping notes. Please keep your microphone muted when you are not speaking. You can switch on and off your video as you prefer. If you have any questions during the presentations, you can either hold on to them until the end, or you can put them in the chat box. I will then go through all of the questions during the Q&A segment after each presentation. If you would like to ask a question during the question period other than through the chat box, please use the raise hand feature and wait to be called upon. Before speaking, briefly introduce yourself to the group and please keep your questions short. Be concise and respectful to other participants. Now, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Andrea Josic, who is the content writer at Catalyst Plus. Andrea is a multi-industry digital marketing professional, specializing in journalism, content creation, and digital strategies. Through her storytelling and digital media experience, Andrea has worked for dozens of companies across Canada, including CBC Radio, the National Post, and Steps Public Art, before joining Catalyst Plus as a content writer on the marketing team. Through a variety of experience in the public, private, and nonprofit sectors, she is passionate about connecting with audiences and growing businesses through engaging and creative marketing strategies. You may write your questions in the chat box as you think of them throughout her presentation, or save them for the Q&A session later. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Andrea Josic. Over to you, Andrea.
Thanks so much, Magda, for that introduction. And hello to everybody. It's so great to see so many advisors with us on this call today. I'm going to take a moment just to share my screen, and we're going to jump into a presentation about marketing in Catalyst Plus and how you as an advisor can become a Catalyst Plus marketing ambassador and share your story at our organization and beyond. Great. Everyone can see my screen okay? Okay, wonderful. So as Magda so wonderfully introduced me, my name is Andrea Josic. I'm the content writer on our small but mighty marketing team here at Catalyst Plus. And I'm so lucky to work alongside two incredible staff members, Kelsey Newman-Reed and Devin Cornelius as well. So here's a quick overview of what we do at the marketing team. We do a lot, both public facing and behind the scenes. And what shows up public facing comes through in our social media. So our primary platforms are LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and X, formerly known as Twitter. We also have our impact stories that we publish on our website and then also share across social media and our newsletter. And then moving on to our monthly newsletter that many of you are subscribed to. And this is where we share with our audience, including advisors, our partners, and beyond, about all of the great things that we do at our organization, including all of the great things that our advisors do. And then we also have a hand in supporting with events and clubs. We don't organize those from start to finish ourselves, but we do have a really big part in marketing those and communicating those with our greater audience. And in the pictures here, we have an example of a photo that we posted on our Instagram. And this was a photo taken by our advisor on assignment and sent to us directly. And then we have an example of an impact story, which is primarily written by myself, other staff members, and sometimes even CAs. And again, these are interviews that we do directly with our CAs and our partners to create these really great impact stories. So the reason that we do what we do and why we do it is really because advisor experiences are the bread and butter at the heart of Catalyst Plus. So without these incredible stories and these pictures and these experiences that all of you share with us, our marketing would not be possible. So through these experiences that we hear from you firsthand, and through interviews that we do with you and these email exchanges that we do with you, we really get to paint a really great picture of Catalyst Plus. So in this photo, this was actually a really unique experience that we had. So here at Catalyst Plus, we partner with many organizations across the world and sometimes multiple at the same time in one specific country. So this was actually 4 advisors on 4 separate assignments in Ghana, and they were in touch and learned that they were all on assignment at the same time, and they actually met up, took this photo together, and were able to, do some storytelling and story sharing between each other, sent this experience over to us, and we were able to share this with our network. So this is just a really special way that you can contribute to our public-facing Catalyst Plus community, but also have the opportunity to create a community amongst yourselves. And that's something that we really focus on. We don't want our advisors to exist in these silos, go on assignment and come back, and that's it. We really want to create these opportunities for all of you advisors to connect with each other. So in terms of what we're looking for and how you as an advisor can support us, there are so many different ways that this can come across. So as I've mentioned, assignment photos are huge, and this is what we publish on our social media. This is what we include in the newsletter. These are pictures that we don't actually even just use once. We actually might use them multiple times across the organization, on social media, even in the slideshow. These are pictures that we really love and have seen and used across the organization. Next thing we're looking for is a newsletter spotlight. So if you are subscribed to our newsletter and you scroll down to the bottom section of our newsletter, you'll see that we every month we try to highlight one or two advisors that are doing something really incredible, whether at the organization or in their own communities. So a couple of months ago, we highlighted our advisor, Andrea Robinson, and she had actually created the Halifax Catalyst Plus Club. And she created it because she saw so many different clubs popping up and starting and running for so long. And there hadn't been a club over in the Atlantic provinces yet. So they just had their first meeting in the new year, in the beginning of the new year. So we decided to highlight her to just, show the above and beyond that she went with Catalyst Plus, and also including a little bit about her bio and what she does outside of Catalyst Plus. So for example, the newsletter spotlight's a great way to showcase who you are outside of Catalyst Plus as well. In the past, we've highlighted anytime an advisor has won an award outside of the organization, or if they published a new book. So those are just some ideas of ways that you can get your name in our newsletter and shared with our audience. The next thing is testimonials. So just a brief quote or experience that you had on assignment. And we usually have our social media officer edit that into a really beautiful graphic and post that on our social media as well. And then the last thing that I've already spoken about is impact stories. So this one about a partnership that we did in Togo. This was actually written by an advisor that went on assignment. You could see their byline at the bottom. And this was sent directly to the marketing team and me as the content writer. I went in, made a small few edits, went back and forth with the advisor, and then we were able to publish it for them on our website. And of course, credit them with the writing, and they have the link now to share with their networks. So these are all great things that you've heard and ways that you can contribute. And now I want to get into some tips and tricks and also ways that you can actually get involved moving forward. So starting with the tips and tricks, the photos, we love any and all photos. We absolutely adore receiving them. So the best way to take these photos actually with your phone camera. You don't need a big professional camera. We love any photos that we can get, especially if they're during the assignment, while you're doing the activities with the community, and just very clear headshots as well work great. And then the only thing we ask for is just the names and the roles of the people in the photos when you submit them. And then another tip and trick just for impact stories, we're really looking for that wow factor. So coming from a journalism background, I really want our stories to focus on more than just this assignment happened. We want to consider what elements of our assignments are involved. So for example, if it's a story about women in rural communities and how they're coming together, and some inspiring anecdotes about how the assignment impacted the women in those communities. And again, it can be, if you are writing the impact story yourself, this can be first person experience. So on the right-hand side of the screen, this was a story from a CA a few years ago who did a couple of virtual assignments and wrote it from that first person perspective. And on the left-hand side here, this was more partner focused. And this was written by a freelance a freelancer that we work with. So it can be written in either way. And of course, that will be sent to us and we can work with you on editing that. And then now the best ways to share your stories and this information with Catalyst Plus. We have a few Google link forms, and these will be shared with all of you as well as posted on My Catalyst Plus, which is a platform I'll get into in just a moment. So we have our content submission form, and this is for any photos, stories, or other submissions from your assignment. So again, we'll have that link for you, and there on the left-hand side of the screen, that's what that form looks like. And then specifically, we have a form for the advisor newsletter spotlight, and that's what you see on the right-hand side of the screen. So that's where you can upload your picture, a bio that includes recent accomplishments that you've had, and we'll share that in the newsletter when the time comes. And then again, you can email us directly. We have been in touch with many advisors over the past years directly through our email. So that's a great way to get in touch with us as well. And it'll be any one of us from the marketing team addressing your concerns or questions or ways to get involved. And then one of just a few more things I want to highlight is the idea of sharing your story beyond Catalyst Plus. So sharing it with specifically your network. So again, talking about that point of being that Catalyst Plus ambassador, really the benefits of this is increasing your impact and growing your own personal community. So in a moment, we will see a presentation from Dan about how he has shared his story beyond just within the Catalyst Plus community. And this can look like, social media, website, journal article, and so on and so forth. And an example that I want to share is the advisor that we see in this picture on the right-hand side, right beside the big Guard Center, logo to the left of that. This is an advisor called Barb Shackle Hardman, and because of her work specifically with Catalyst Plus, she was invited to speak at the Rural Women's Conference in Alberta, and she shared anecdotes from her assignments. So really working with Catalyst Plus and engaging from a marketing perspective can grow your own career and your own network outside of the assignment itself and outside of our organization. And then touching briefly on My Catalyst Plus, this is a really great resource that is accessible to all advisors across the organization. And when you log into the My Catalyst Plus portal, you'll see these notices. So you'll have highlights and posts about upcoming events. So we have our events happening today and the following day, and then we also have an event coming up on Friday as well. So these are ways that you can stay in touch with our events beyond our website and our newsletter. And then we also have a little resources tab circled there in red. And if you follow that resources tab, you'll be taken to a page with slide decks, brand assets, any updates and assignments. And when you go on assignment, you can use these slide decks to create your presentations for your partner. And that just helps make things a bit easier for you. So you're not starting, from scratch and completely blank template. So that is an overview of all of the different things we do at the marketing team. I have such a short amount of time, and I really wish I could dive into all of the great details about everything that we do. And so hopefully that gives you a clear idea of what we do and how you can get involved and how you can grow within our organization and beyond. So now is really the time for anybody to ask any questions, and I'll be more than happy to answer those, or we can bring in some of our staff from the volunteer services team as well. So thank you all so much for listening to the presentation, and we'd love to open it up to some Q&A for all of you.
Thank you so much, Andrea. It was short but very sweet. I do not see any questions in the chat box, so feel free to add your questions now, or if you're brave enough or would you like to speak, feel free to use the raise hand feature to ask your questions. Yes, I see Michael. Go ahead.
Okay, so I do a book
Mhm.
after each of my assignments. There's one,
Cool.
and it includes, I hope everybody can hear me, it includes a lot of photographs and explanations of what I was doing and how I did it. Don't know if you can see that. Most of my assignments, of course, are in agriculture. That's my profession. So my question is, what can you use this in any way?
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Michael. That's really beautiful that you put that together. That's great. I think I'll send my question back over to you. Do you create these just for your own personal, I guess, memories, or do you have these available somewhere? Like, what does that look like for you?
Um, I mean, I create them for my memories, also because I have lots of friends and a big family. They all ask me, so what did you do? And I just hand them the book. And then they can ask me any questions and they can go through it as long or as rather than just showing them on my phone,
Right.
it just works better. I can also use this to give presentations, right? And I can also copy it into another format for something else, because I have all the photos, all the slides, everything that I've created to create this.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Michael. It's a great way to remember your assignments. And so I think something, if, in the future, if it makes sense for, you to do a presentation, for example, we have our CA that's going to do a presentation after me. If that makes sense in some way, then we can discuss that at a later point. But also, I think it's a really neat way for advisors to remember their assignments. So even just sharing that option with our advisors is something that we could do. So if you wanted to reach out to us directly and we could ideate on what that looks like, that would be great, because I think that's a really creative idea.
Thank you, Michael. I see Hani has his hand up. Oh, you're on mute. Hani, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. How far back can I go on which, like, I did some 3 assignments in Ethiopia that were quite impactful, but if they're a few years ago, are they too dated now to write anything about them, or can I still submit something like that?
Yeah, that is a great question. How long ago were the assignments specifically?
Oh,
I can
at
remember.
least I'd say, well, they started during the pandemic because 2 of them were virtual, and then right after the pandemic. So I'd say they're at least 3 years.
Okay. Yeah, I think when we think about these stories and these assignments, like COVID onwards, because of course the landscape of the world and the nature of the assignments changed so much following the pandemic. I think it's a matter of us looking into seeing what these partners have done with us since then, if we've collaborated with them, because some of the things that we did on assignment may not be applicable with them anymore. So it is a case-by-case basis. Again, Hani, if you would like to reach out to us and we could take a look at, if we're still working with this partner and if it would make sense to share this story with our audience right now.
Okay. I also did one in Senegal last year. Can I submit? It's like I can handle the French, but it's easier for me to write stuff in English. Can I hand it in English and or we can work together on the translation?
Yeah, absolutely. So anything that's submitted in English to our staff is translated by our staff into French and vice versa. So you don't have to worry about the translations.
Okay.
Yeah. So anything a year or two ago is great. Once we get over maybe 2-3 years, then we'd have to look into if we can cover those.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Hani and Andrea. We have time for a couple more questions. Santosh, can you hear us? Seems like your audio is having problems, so feel free to speak whenever you're able to, or feel free to write your question in the chat as well. While we give them time to get their microphone connected, are there any other questions? No? I don't want to hold us up too much. So Santosh, you can maybe leave your question to the end of the session or feel free to write it in the chat. If there are no other questions, then I would like to introduce our next speaker, Dan Rubenstein. Please let me just share his presentation with you before we begin. Everyone can see this? Perfect, thank you so much. So Dan was born in Poughkeepsie, New York, attended Tufts University and Medford, Massachusetts, and came to Canada in 1970. In Canada, Dan had 3 careers. First, as a chartered accountant who worked for 24 years at the Office of the Auditor General of Canada, doing performance audits. Second, as a human geographer, working as a volunteer for formerly CASO, now Catalyste Plus. And third, as a published writer. Dan has written 2 books so far and is currently working on a spy novel. Dan was recently featured in Pivot Magazine and CPA Canada, where he shared details about his many assignments completed while volunteering with Catalyste Plus, along with how his passion for helping others began. Over to you, Dan. Let me know just when to switch the slides.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you, fellow volunteers, for sharing time with us all together. Thank you to Catalyste. It's such a wonderful organization, and that's really why it's so nice to tell our story, because it's a good news story. So my story began first when I met our president. I don't know, 5-10 years ago. Yeah, we can stay on this one. And I met Wendy. It was an event in Toronto, and I realized she was just a dynamite person. Her vitality, and we kind of hit it off. And then I found out that she's a CPA, so we had this bond. And so this was about 5 years ago. We started talking, say, these CPAs are useful creatures, and we really got to recruit more of them. There's many different professions that are useful to Catalyste, and the list goes on and on, from agricultural workers to pastry chefs to beekeepers. But accountants are useful, and because so many things degenerate down to money, and we can deal with money. So we said, hey, wouldn't it be great if we could get an article into our CPA magazine? So that's what I'm going to tell you about, how it took us 5 years to do it, but we finally did it. So that's what I'm going to talk about. I guess we could go with the next slide. So I guess if we're going to write about anything, we'll get into the mechanics of it, but I would say the starting point for anything we're going to write in any publicity work is essentially an existential question, like, why do we do this? Well, and if we understand why we do it, then we can understand how people might want to relate to us for doing this work and how they may want to contribute to the organization, and also how we may be able to recruit them. So what I'm going to walk you through is just the roadmap I followed to get published. You start off with why do I want to tell the story? Then the most important thing is, hey, who would be interested in my story about Kesso? Well, of course, as Andrea said, well, other CASO volunteers. But hey, if we want to go outside the family, like, who would be interested? So you got to think about an audience. And now you've identified an audience, and then you got to think, well, what would they want to hear and why? And then there's the act of writing a story. Now, what you'll find is that whatever story you can write, if you can get a good journalist, they're going to do a better job than you are going to do. And it won't, first person is great, but well-written third-person point of view is even better. And that's what a good journalist will do. And we're fortunate enough to have good journalistic staff at Kesso, people like Andrea. So once you got a story told, then you got to get it published. But it doesn't end, because once you've got it published, then your job is to recruit money and people for Kesso. So you got to stay involved. And once you've got your name in an article, people are going to write to you and you got to respond. So that's what I'm going to talk about this afternoon. We can switch over to the next slide. Okay, so the post-volunteer, why each of us has our own reasons. For me, uh, yeah, I retired and I still seem to have a bit more jam. So, hey, I'd like to do something. And as my wife recently said to me, she said, in this troubled world, it's so neat to be connected by a little pinpoint to some other spot in the world that's totally different than what it's like in Canada and North America, or the chaos we're going through. And that's really a gift. Now, why I do it? Yeah, there's a sense of adventure. Uh, I do. I won't deny that. And what I found, and this is real important. This is a real important point that we got to make in our publicity work. Uh, Melville once said, in his Moby Dick, he said, there's all the difference in the world between being a sailor and a passenger. And I feel, using that quote, there's all the difference in the world between being a volunteer and being a tourist. And frankly, being a tourist bores me. I can sit in a resort. Yeah, it's nice, but after a day, I'm bored. Come on, give me something to do. Let me find some people to talk to. Now, in my case, there's a passion to preserve nature. So, for example, in my current assignment, early stages, if any of you have ever been to Belize, they have a wonderful system of nature reserves, and I'm going to be helping them with some accounting issues. And yeah, it's fun, and I find sometimes in retirement, if you're familiar with the great author Saki H. Monroe, he wrote a story about the unrest cure, and sometimes you need an unrest cure in retirement. Then when I go on assignment, I take on a different persona. I'm Mr. Dan. It's a nom de guerre I picked up, and I like it. I turn into a different person. So that's kind of my reasons. But let's switch slides here, Maga. Okay, now, who would be interested in your story? Now, I've said that every one of us are involved with different professional organizations, and virtually every one of these organizations, or many of them, has a magazine that comes out. Now, in my case, starting in my discussion with Wendy Harris 5 years ago, we wanted to focus on the CPA, I think the CPA magazine it's called. Now, I figured, because Wendy, I'm not a big deal, but Wendy is a big deal. I figured she would have a whole bunch of contacts. If I wrote up a little brief of an article, she could place it with her friends in the profession, the big hitters in Toronto, and it'd be a done deal. Well, it didn't happen that way, and we'll tell you how we dealt with that. Even she didn't have the pull that I thought she might have, and so we had to go to a plan B. So who's going to be interested in my story? Now, the reason I was successful, so maybe you write for a beekeeping magazine, maybe you write for an agricultural journal, maybe you write for you read stuff from an engineering journal, whatever it is. Now, I find in my CPA magazine, and I can't speak for yours, but I find it's all about the young and the restless and the ambitious. And, they're in high tech, they're going to make tens of millions. I'm excited. But you know what? When I look at the young and the restless and the ambitious, I don't see myself. I'm an old guy. I'm retired. Totally different ball game. And by the way, I figured out that about 25% of the people reading the CPA magazine were old timers like me. And after a while, at talking to them, I realized, hey, enough of the young and restless. So maybe there's room in these magazines to talk about the retirement crowd because they're part of the readership. And the shtick that I wanted to go for with the CPA magazine was, hey, volunteerism. My punchline is my lead line. My headline was volunteerism is written into the DNA of CPAs. So what I wanted to do. So my point here is you got to figure out who would be interested in hearing your story. I'm suggesting in your professional group, there's a whole bunch of the readers of the retired. And if you've got something interesting to tell them about what you did with your retirement time, and even some of the young and restless ones that are hitting the 50, they're getting stale, they're gonna, they're on their last job. They're these type A types, women and men. They got all this energy they want something to do with. So they might be interested as they reach the end of their their spectacular career. So you think about your audience. Okay. We can. So okay, so this is I've been all through that. So now think about your pitch. Think about your pitch. Okay, so you now got a group. Um, Now this is where it gets tricky because what you have to understand with you've got to think like a freelance writer. Now I have some experience, as I mentioned, in my latest career. Now, and by the way, my favorite career, of the three is being a human geographer with Catalyst. I never made any money from this, but when I'm a really, really old man as opposed to a semi-old man, this is what I'm going to think about. So okay, so now you've got a target group, you've got your magazine, it might be the accounting magazine, it might be the realtors magazine, it might be, and by the way, you want to go for big exposure. So like the CPA magazine was a juicy target because there's like 200,000 readers. So and you have to think at this point, you got to think about what your pitch is going to be. You got to think about your end game. My end game was I wanted to recruit CPAs for Catalyst. That's they're useful. We don't get enough of them. We're going to, as we do more and more technically advanced assignments, we're going to need this expertise. So that my game plan was recruitment. Okay, so you've identified a magazine, could be agricultural, could be CPA. You read the articles and you figure out how the articles get there. You figure out who's the editor. Now, what I found in the CPAs is that once upon a time, they used to be written by CPAs. Like I had the dubious award. I was the CPA who won the more awards for the best English speaking article. Those were the days in the CPA. Now it's all written by professionals. Okay, so what you realize, you have to understand how things get published in your magazine. Uh, maybe you can write up a pitch and that would be like 100 words or less. You look at the inside cover of your magazine, you find out who the editors are, you get their phone number, you get their email. Maybe you can write up a pitch and maybe they'll give you the time of day, and maybe you can sell your pitch and then write up a 500-word article. And by the way, when you're doing that, once you've made the pitch, if you don't have a professional involved, you can get people like Andrea Josic, who just gave us a pitch. She's wonderful. She can help you tell your story. So once you've made the pitch, there's all kinds of backup help you can get on our team. So, but let's say, like with the CPA magazine, I wrote them. I wouldn't get a return. Wendy wouldn't get in the thing. I didn't get in the thing. So then I figured out, hey, they don't I'm just a member. I just pay their salaries, but I'm not going to get the time of day from these guys. I have to get to one of, I go through their magazine, I get the names of who's writing, and I get that person to make the pitch. So that's what I did. It was a wonderful writer named Jeff Buckstein. Now, it turns out that Jeff and I went back a ways, and in my days when I was writing books about green accounting and stuff like that, Jeff wrote articles about me. So we had a rapport. So I went to Jeff and said, listen, Jeff, I want to get a, I want to, I didn't want it just to be about me. I wanted it to be about all the retired women and men in the CPA profession. And I said, let's make a pitch, and you can do the writing, but let's get volunteers, senior volunteers, the retired CPA volunteers to write up their stories, and we'll have a different one covered every month. And let's Jeff make that pitch. So he tried to make that pitch, and I said I'd do the first one. You and I will do the first one. But that wouldn't fly. So, but then Jeff said, he said, listen, I think I can, I know you talk a good line. I can do an interesting story about you. So let's do one for you, and I think I can sell it. So then Jeff went to the editor and he sold it. So, but we're just now at the beginning of the end of the beginning. So now let's say we could probably switch over the next one. That's me in Honduras, my first assignment. Okay, let's go back a bit. I got ahead of the game here. Let's go back. Okay, so now I've got a writer interested. So now how do we produce this thing? So what he's going to do is sit down with you and do an interview. Any good journalist can sit down with you for an hour, do a Zoom, tape it, come back to you, 2 or 3 days. They'll come back to you with a good 500 words. So then your job is to look at it closely, give a copy of it, work closely with Andrea. I work closely with the people with Wendy, because it was her pet project. She was delighted. She'd say, and by the way, when you're making your pitch, can you get this one in, get that one in? Sure, the price is right. So the writers, he sat down with you, she or he sat down with you for an hour. You got a draft, you proofread it, then you say, okay, I'm good to go. You give it to you give it back to the writer. He sends it in. There's a formal clearance process. Like the accountants are pretty serious. You have to sign off and recognize legal liability for it. And then they'll give you a publication date, and then then it's out. So once it comes out, you get a PDF version of it. You send it to Kesso, you send it to Catalyste, you send it to all your friends, and you make sure that in that article that you've got your email. So then then you're going to get emails. So I got, unfortunately, I have to say I got less than I'd hoped, just because I wanted to do it for Kesso. It wasn't about my ego. But I did get a few, and I showed them how to volunteer, and made sure that they didn't hit any snags. And now it's time to follow up with them and see how they've done on their first assignment. So, that's pretty much my story, I think, Magda, and I'll be quiet now.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Dan. It was incredibly interesting. I can confirm that we've had several CPAs join Catalyst Plus because of your article.
Oh.
I don't know any of them by name. I just know that we've had some join. So thank you again for the presentation. And now we will open up the floor if anyone has any questions for you. I did see Santosh has asked the question from the previous presentation, so I'll just quickly answer that. His question was, are there any opportunities for new advisors, or should I work with another advisor before getting an assignment? Our assignments are open to all active advisors, so no matter how long you have been with Catalyst Plus, you have the opportunity to apply for the assignment. Our volunteer services team will brief you and get you ready for the assignment, so you will be able to go on it fully confident. We can connect you with another advisor and they can give you tips and tricks that they've learned, such as Dan. However, if you are new to our organization, do not let that stop you from applying. We highly encourage all advisors, especially new ones, to apply for opportunities. Oh, and I see that Puck has answered that, so I apologize. But does anyone else have any questions, whether in the chat or you can raise your hand to ask? And the questions can be for Dan or for any of the staff members. No questions? Dan, looks like you've covered everything.
Okay. All right.
So thank you again. I would say if there are no more questions, then this would conclude the official part of our meetup today. Thank you again to Andrea and Dan, for our wonderful speakers, for taking the time to share with us your knowledge and experience. I would also like to thank all of you for joining us today and asking questions and listening and participating. Before we move on to the informal networking segment of the session, I would like to spotlight the use of My Catalyst Plus, which Andrea has touched upon before. So My Catalyst Plus is your portal to search for assignment opportunities as well as any resources. In your profile, you can update your resume and roles, which will help you find assignments that match your expertise. You can also set up email notifications and preferences, which will determine how often you receive the notifications. I believe they can be on a weekly or a monthly basis. Please be sure to keep these notifications, to set up these notifications if you are interested, and always keep your profile updated to make sure that we have the right match for every assignment. And this is where you can update your notifications and your roles and preferences and view assignment opportunities. I see there's some messages in the chat. Oh, then Santosh's question was for us, for staff
Okay.
members,
Okay.
just about assignment opportunities.
Okay.
So now for those of you who are interested in some informal networking, we will be opening up a few breakout rooms for a 30-minute information session. Otherwise, I would like to say a final thank you for joining us. We will be hosting the same session tomorrow, but in French, with a different advisor as the speaker. We will now stop the recording.